Imagine creating one of Britain's greatest science fiction television series, a show that was decades ahead of its time. Fans still love it, people are still discovering it, and over 50 years later, they're still begging for a reboot. So why hasn't it happened? Well, welcome to another classic case of Hollywood development hell. We are talking corporate ownership, decades-old contracts, and enough legal red tape to launch a spaceship. If you thought the story behind Space 1999 was frustrating, you haven't seen anything yet. After my recent video on Space 1999, loads of you mentioned UFO and how the two shows are related. Once I started digging into the history, I realised the behind-the-scenes story might actually be more unbelievable than the series itself, because this isn't a story about bad writing, and it isn't a story about audiences rejecting a reboot. It is a story about what happens when brilliant ideas end up locked away by corporate ownership. So, let's watch this particular piece of nonsense unfold. Back in 1970, Gerry and Sylvia Anderson did something completely different. Most science fiction at the time was fairly optimistic, focusing on bright futures, exploration, and adventure. UFO went in a completely different direction. In this show, Earth was already under attack, not by an invading army, but by aliens secretly harvesting human organs just to survive. Standing in their way was SHADO, the supreme headquarters alien defense organization, hidden beneath a perfectly ordinary film studio. It is a brilliant concept. You have a secret military operation featuring moon bases, interceptor aircraft, submarines, and early warning satellites. The whole thing felt grounded, military, and serious. Even today, it still feels remarkably fresh. Sure, the purple wigs haven't aged brilliantly, but the ideas absolutely have. So, if the concept is still so good, why hasn't somebody brought it back? Well, people have tried, more than once. In fact, the nearest we ever got was back in 2009. Hollywood announced a massive, big-budget movie with visual effects guru Matthew Gratzner attached to direct. They even lined up Fringe star Joshua Jackson to play test pilot Paul Foster, and there was genuine talk of turning the whole thing into an epic trilogy. It sounds promising, doesn't it? Well, that is exactly where the problems started. Instead of just making one really good movie, Hollywood immediately started thinking about a franchise. They wanted sequels, huge budgets, and massive visual effects. Everything had to be bigger, and everything had to be grander. Before a single frame had even been filmed, the budget ballooned out of control. Now, imagine trying to convince investors to spend well over $100 million on a British television series from 1970 that younger viewers had never even heard of. Suddenly, everyone got nervous. Funding dried up, production stalled, and the actors moved on. Eventually, the project just slipped into development hell. Another classic case of Hollywood trying to run before it can even walk. But here is where things get really interesting. That Hollywood failure wasn't actually the biggest obstacle. The real problem goes all the way back to the beginning. When Gerry Anderson wanted to make UFO, he needed someone to pay for it. That someone was Sir Lou Grade and ITC Entertainment. Like many television deals back then, the financier wanted complete ownership. Today, we expect creators to keep some control over their work, but back then, it just didn't work that way. Gerry Anderson signed away the rights. At the time, nobody could have predicted streaming, Blu-rays, merchandise, or endless global reruns. Television was seen as something you watched once and then moved on. With hindsight, it was a painful deal, because even though Gerry created one of Britain's most influential sci-fi series, he no longer controlled its future. Over the decades, those rights passed from company to company through corporate mergers, buyouts, and restructuring until eventually they ended up with ITV. Now, here's the frustrating part. ITV legally owns the television rights. If they wanted to, they could start developing a new UFO series tomorrow, but realistically, they probably won't. Modern prestige sci-fi is incredibly expensive. We are talking millions of pounds per episode. That is a massive financial gamble, especially for a 50-year-old cult series. And all of that is before you even solve the various licensing questions surrounding the property. So instead, the rights largely just sit there. You get the occasional streaming release, the odd Blu-ray, and a bit of merchandising, but no major television revival. It's incredibly frustrating because audiences have shown time and again that they still love intelligent sci-fi. Just look at some of the biggest streaming hits over the last few years. The appetite is clearly there. Honestly, I wouldn't completely rule it out. The concept hasn't aged. If anything, it's become more relevant. Secret organisations, global threats, advanced technology, space defence, that all still works. The challenge isn't the story. The challenge is getting the right people together, the right studio, the right budget, the right creative team, and perhaps most importantly, someone willing to unlock the rights and actually make it happen. For me, this is another example of wasted potential, not because the idea doesn't work, not because fans don't care, but because corporate ownership has left another fantastic science fiction property sitting on a shelf. It's strange, really. Studios keep searching for the next big franchise, while established classics with loyal fan bases quietly gather dust. Maybe one day someone will finally dust off UFO and give it the modern adaptation it deserves. I'd certainly like to see it, provided they actually respect what made the original so special, because we've seen enough modern reboots that completely miss the point. Let's not add another one to that list. But what do you think? Have you ever watched UFO? Would you like to see a faithful reboot, or would you rather leave this classic exactly where it is? And if someone did bring it back, who would you trust to make it? Let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the notification bell. It really helps the channel grow, and it tells me you want to see more deep dives into classic sci-fi, forgotten franchises and the corporate nonsense that keeps them locked away. Until next time, thanks for watching.